The day the divorce papers were finalized, I walked out of the courthouse in Columbus, Ohio, feeling like a man who had just attended his own funeral. The sky was gray, heavy with rain that never seemed to fall, and the wind cut through my coat as if it had something personal against me. I remember staring at my reflection in the courthouse glass doors and barely recognizing the hollow-eyed stranger looking back. 9 years of marriage to Rachel had ended in less than 15 minutes before a judge who barely glanced up from his file. But what shattered me wasn't the judge's words. It wasn't even Rachel's silence. It was what happened next. As I stepped down the courthouse stairs, Rachel's younger sister, Vanessa, caught up to me. Her heels clicked urgently against the concrete, and when she reached my side, she leaned close enough that I could feel her breath against my ear. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "Be my husband. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the unexpected ways life rewrites our stories, take a moment right now to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel." Stories like this remind us that broken endings sometimes hide beautiful beginnings. I froze. For a second I thought I'd misheard her. Vanessa had always been the quiet one at family gatherings in Cincinnati, the one who helped clear plates while Rachel argued politics with my uncle. She was the one who once brought me a glass of water when she noticed I looked overwhelmed at Thanksgiving dinner. But this was different. This wasn't kindness. This was something reckless, dangerous, impossible. I pulled away without saying a word and walked to my car. My hands shook so badly I dropped my keys twice. In the rearview mirror, I saw Vanessa standing at the top of the courthouse steps, her long auburn hair whipping in the wind, her eyes fixed on me like she had just thrown her last lifeline. For weeks after that day, I tried to rebuild my life in silence. I moved into a small one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of Columbus. The place smelled faintly of old carpet and loneliness. My evenings were spent staring at a muted television, replaying every mistake I had made in my marriage. I wondered if I had worked too much, if I had listened too little, if love simply had an expiration date I had been too blind to notice. Rachel and I had grown apart slowly, like two boats drifting from the same dock. There was no affair, no screaming matches, just distance, a quiet, aching distance. But Vanessa's whisper haunted me. It echoed in the stillness of my apartment at night. 3 weeks after the divorce, I received a call from my former father-in-law, Thomas. His voice sounded older, thinner. He asked if I could come by the house in Cincinnati to help fix the old porch railing. "You always had a knack for repairs," he said softly. I hesitated, but I agreed. Driving back to the house I once called home felt like reopening a wound. The oak tree in the front yard still leaned slightly to the left. The porch swing still creaked in the wind. When I stepped inside, memories flooded me so intensely that I had to grip the doorway to steady myself. Vanessa was there, sitting at the kitchen table with a mug of coffee. She looked up when I entered, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. There was no boldness in her eyes now, only vulnerability. I fixed the railing in silence while Thomas watched from a lawn chair. He talked about retirement plans and fishing trips he never took. When I finished, Vanessa walked me to my car. The late afternoon sun painted everything in gold. She didn't repeat her whisper. Instead, she told me the truth. Rachel had moved to Seattle with a coworker. The divorce, she admitted, had been coming for a long time. Vanessa said she had seen the loneliness in me years before I admitted it to myself. She confessed that her whisper at the courthouse wasn't about betrayal. It was about desperation. Not romantic desperation, but something deeper. She had just been diagnosed with a chronic heart condition. She was scared. She wanted stability. She trusted me. Her honesty stunned me more than her whisper ever could. I drove back to Columbus with a storm in my chest. Part of me was angry. Angry at the situation, at fate, at how messy life had become. But another part of me felt something unexpected. Purpose. Over the next few months, Vanessa and I began talking. Not secretly, not recklessly, openly. We met in public places halfway between Columbus and Cincinnati. Coffee shops, parks. We spoke about fear, about regret, about the strange way our lives had collided. I learned that Vanessa had always felt invisible in her family. Rachel had been the charismatic one, the achiever. Vanessa had been the caretaker, the steady presence no one noticed until she was gone. One evening, sitting by the Ohio River as the sun dipped below the skyline, She told me she didn't mean be my husband in the traditional sense. She meant stand with me. She meant partnership. She meant choosing each other not out of rebellion but out of understanding. Still, the idea terrified me. People would talk. Rachel would hate us. Friends would judge. But life has a way of shrinking your fears when faced with bigger truths. Vanessa's health began to decline slightly. Nothing dramatic, but enough to remind us that time is never guaranteed. One winter night, she was admitted briefly to a hospital in Cincinnati after experiencing chest pain. I drove down through snow and ice without thinking. When I arrived and saw her lying in that sterile white room, looking small and fragile, something inside me settled. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't loneliness. It was love. Not the fiery, passionate kind I once had with Rachel, but a quiet, enduring love built on shared wounds and second chances. We moved slowly. We told her father first. Thomas surprised us by smiling through tears. "I always knew you were a good man, Christopher," he said, gripping my shoulder. Rachel found out months later. There were angry messages at first, accusations. But eventually, even she seemed to understand that life had moved forward. Vanessa and I married in a small chapel outside Columbus the following spring. The ceremony was simple. No grand speeches. No dramatic gestures. Just a handful of close friends and her father sitting in the front row. When she walked down the aisle, she didn't look like someone stealing her sister's past. She looked like a woman choosing her future. Marriage to Vanessa wasn't perfect. There were hospital visits. There were days of exhaustion and fear, but there was also laughter in the kitchen at midnight, road trips to Lake Erie, quiet mornings wrapped in blankets on the porch I once repaired. The greatest surprise came 2 years later, when doctors told us her condition had stabilized more than expected. The medications were working. Her heart was stronger. Sometimes I think back to that gray day outside the courthouse, to the whisper that felt like madness. I realize now it wasn't reckless. It was brave. Life after divorce felt like an ending carved in stone. But it was only a chapter closing. Vanessa didn't save me from loneliness. She showed me that broken people can still build something whole. If this story touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like, share, and comment. Your engagement helps these stories reach others who may be standing on their own courthouse steps, wondering if life is over. And before we end, I have one special request. Comment the word second chance if you believe love sometimes arrives in the most unexpected whispers. Because sometimes, the person who stands quietly in the background is the one who sees you most clearly. Sometimes, a single whisper can rewrite an entire future. I lost a marriage that day in Columbus, but I found a partnership I never knew I needed. And in the end, that whisper wasn't a betrayal. It was a beginning.